that we have even been able to establish these nunneries is a very great thing. I think it is right that we be pleased and self-confident. Education is the key to our strength in spreading and practicing the Buddha Dharma as nuns. However, these days in our nunnery, there are many difficulties to clear up, and due to this, we have not had the satisfactory study. We have to spend lots of time doing work just to meet our basic needs. We get little or none of the time which is needed for important study. Because nuns have dedicated their life to the Dharma, they desire to thoroughly understand the meaning of the Buddha's teaching. Not only that, with the suppression of traditional Tibetan studies in Tibet, study of art and science of our country is in great danger of extinction. Nuns have a strong aspiration to help keep this heritage from degenerating in the world. Also, they have a strong interest in learning English in order to have good culture and religious exchange from the people of other countries. However, because of poor facilities in our nunnery, there is no good preparation for teaching the nuns these subjects. Also, each year there are many new nuns who want to stay in the nunnery, but we cannot make adequate preparation for them in housing, food, and so forth. We cannot accept them and have to send them away, very discouraged about not achieving their desire. When the problems which I have mentioned are solved, and if we can give the nuns the education they aspire for with proper facilities and conditions, then there is no doubt that they will be with great courage to do much beneficial work in the community of sentient beings. If Tibetan nuns also have access to excellent opportunity for study of all aspects of Dharma, as monks currently have, we will be in strong position to make our own valid and unique contribution to upholding the Buddha Dharma. This week, we have gathered from all over the world to share our ideas and experiences, and our opportunity is a very beneficial one. With increased education, we will be able to make richer contribution in our future conferences and learn in turn from each other traditions. With increased language skills, we will be able to share the Buddhist point of view to the interested people who are looking for alternative to materialism and suffering of the modern world. With strengthening of our own practice of the Dharma by extensive study and reflection, we will be better able to share the precious Buddhist values of non-violence, boundless love, and compassion as the only real source of individual and world peace. Education is the fuel nuns need to become a mighty force in upholding the Buddha Dharma in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shamanarika Tenzin Dosang. I think you agree with me that she prepared well, and I agree with her point that education is very necessary for Tibetan nuns. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Shamanarika Lapsang Dechen. Would you like to come? She's ordained in 1975 when she was only in 7th standard. And then she received her bachelor degree, and then she goes on to receive her bachelor degree in education in Chandigarh. This was in 1983. Right now, she is teaching at TCV Lower Dharamsala. Her nunnery is Garden Choling in Dharamsala. So here we are with Lobsang Dechen.
Thank you for my introduction. Thank you for my introduction. Now I'm going to present you the nuns in the Tibetan tradition. Okay, nuns in the Tibetan tradition. The Buddhism reached Tibet in the 7th century. During the reigns of King Sungzan Gampo, the first monastery were founded in the 8th century under the rules of King Trisung Dilsen. The nunneries were founded later in 11th century. The first nunnery is said to have been established in a place called Phenpo, to the north of Lhasa, the capital of Tibet. Others were gradually developed throughout the country. By 1959, when the communists took over, there were 618 nunneries and 12,398 nuns. During the 1960s and early 70s, not a single robed figure could be seen anywhere in Tibet. Under the new policy of relaxation, only several hundred Sangha have been reappeared and again joined the few remaining monasteries. Among 24 monasteries being reconstructed, the only 2 are nunneries. The Garikompa and Sangku both are visited in Lhasa. Fortunately, the Tibetan tradition had spread neighboring Asian countries and more recently to many Western countries. But there are not many organized nunneries, and most nuns live widely dispersed in villages and remote areas. For this reason, it is very difficult to get exact accounts of nuns in Tibetan tradition. Nevertheless, we have gathered some information which may serve as a basis and reference for the understanding of the current condition of these nuns. In India, there is a total of approximately 772 following the Tibetan tradition. They are distributed as follows. In Ladakh, there are about 250. In Laos and Piti, 103. There are about 106 nuns in Kinnaur, and about 100 lives in Sanskar. There are 138 Sangha reside in the Dharamsala area, including Telukpur. 22 in Nonkot, 25 in Darjeeling, 28 in Kulu area, Ralsa and Pangang. Many others young women wish to become nun and join to nunnery, but the limited accommodation of the existing nunnery is already filled, so they are unable to do so. The neighboring country of the Nepal is the home of about 500 nuns. 13 nunneries have been established there, but again, due to shortage of living space, many nuns live on their own. Bhutan is a purely Buddhist country. There are about 600 nuns living in Bhutan, only 100 of whom live in their nunneries. The remainder live on their own. Those who are from wealthy family are supported by the parents. Others go from place to place to beg for grains during the harvest season, and the rest of the year they resume their practice. The same is the case with the nuns who live in Himalayan region. If they have no means of support, they are compelled to go from place to place for their basic necessities. So, some stays with their families during the cultivation and harvest season to help with work in the field. The main source of income for the nunnery is a performing ritual ceremony by the lay community. This practice helps accumulate merits and remove the obstacles for the sponsor. Donation offered by the sponsor for this ceremony are primary source of the income for the nunneries. Currently, there is only one nunnery established in Western country, the Doji Pangmo nunnery in Loire, France. 8 Western nuns. There are further 240 Western nuns who have no permanent basis. Many move between India and Nepal. Others live in North America, Europe, Australia on their own. These nuns will greatly benefit when plan to build more nunneries can be realized. Although education now has been extensively developed, the opportunities for nuns to receive education is very limited. The main emphasis in nuns training is the memorization of prayers. Each day, a nun memorizes a certain number of lines, recite them before the elder nuns who serve as teachers. To retain previously memorized material, they recite the full text from memory in the evening. The majority of the nuns who know how to read the scripture, but they don't know how to write. This indicates that their main concentration in their Dharma practice is chanting and meditation. Recently, however, changes of great significance have taken place. At the Gandhan Churling Nunnery in Dharamsala, classes in basic logic and philosophy are being given. This has never happened before on a formal basis in the history of nun in the Tibetan tradition. They are also learning Tibetan literature, grammar, and calligraphy. Likewise, in Nepal, classes in dialectics, English, and Tibetan are being held at both in Kopan Monastery and at Kirong Thekchok Choling Nunnery. The biggest challenge that faces nuns today is the lack of adequate facilities. There are many nuns in Himalayan border areas, many arriving fresh from Tibet, who after a long, difficult journey from this region cannot find a place to live in an existing nunnery. And unfortunately, the severe house shortage discouraged young Tibetan women from taking ordination who might otherwise be interested. To conclude, the nuns community within the Tibetan tradition has a long history. It has produced numerous virtuous and realized practitioners. Now, as opportunity for women are increasing, there is a wish to improve and expand the circumstance of female Sangha in the Tibetan order. For those fortunate enough to have a place in a nunnery, the instruction is still inadequate. Current emphasis must be on the expansion of education opportunity and the development of scholarship programs. It is essential that fundamentals of religious education be taught to all nuns, and the subject of general education, such as languages, be introduced as well. Also, for those particularly interested in intensive meditation practice, retreat facilities should be constructed. Lastly, in 1984, 4 Tibetan nuns received full ordination as a bhikshuni in Hong Kong. It is hoped that this year again 4 more nuns can receive ordination, and in time a strong bhikshuni sangha may evolve. By raising the level of education, by providing better facility, and by slowly establishing bhikshuni lineage, we hope to strengthen the order of the nuns in the Tibetan tradition so that the female sangha can serve better for the general community and the Buddhist faith. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lapsang Dechen. I am not a Tibetan, but I'm terribly proud of her. To see. She has been working so hard, yet she has time to prepare for this kind of speech. I'm really happy. Thank you so much. The next person, she's not Korean, but she's well known to you. Our Venerable Karma Lecture Somo will speak on the nuns in Buddhist tradition, on the nuns in Korean tradition. I don't think she needs any introduction, does she? But as a friend, I'm very impressed that she has been very devoted. And she spent, I think, her first ordination, she was ordained in Tibetan tradition for 6 years, and then she received full ordination in Korean tradition. And again, she went over to Taiwan and received full ordination in Taiwan. So she has 2 full ordinations, and she's a full person.
I'm happy to speak to you today about the nuns in the Korean tradition. We were hoping to have some Korean nuns with us today. I had written many letters to friends in Korea and asked them to come to the conference. Unfortunately, for a number of reasons, no one has been able to come. One reason is that in the winter time, for 3 months, all Korean monks and nuns stay for 3 months in an intensive meditation retreat. They also have such an intensive meditation retreat for 3 months during the summer. Once one has entered the retreat, it is impossible to leave. You have to complete the retreat once it's begun. This tradition of intensive retreat stems from China. Korean Buddhism originally came from China. The exact dates, I'm afraid I cannot give you, but it was quite early on, perhaps in the 5th and 6th centuries. At that time, meditation monasteries were established, first for monks and later for nuns. It is said that the style of the present monasteries in Korea is very similar to the ancient style of such monasteries in China, that the monastic traditions, and particularly the meditative tradition of China, is very nicely preserved in Korea. I can only speak from my own personal experience there. The nuns were asked to send the facts and figures, some statistics about the numbers of nuns, the numbers of nunneries, and so forth, but I didn't receive this information. So what I can say is my experience of having traveled to Korea. I was making plans to take Bhikshuni ordination, and on the way to Taiwan, where I had made the preparations, I also stopped in Korea to visit Korean nunneries. It just so happened that an ordination was being given 3 days after I arrived. It so happens that also this was the first dual ordination to be held in Korea in 100 years. Under the Japanese occupation, which lasted for more than 50 years, Korean Buddhism suffered a number of changes. As mentioned this morning, the Japanese practice of Buddhism is somewhat different. At one stage, the Mahayana practices began to take precedence over the Pratimoksha practices. It was thought that if one held the Mahayana vows, the Bodhisattva vows, that one need not be so careful about the Vinaya vows. According to Tibetan masters, it's important to keep both. But in any case, what happened was that under the Japanese occupation, those sects of Buddhism which allowed the monks to marry flourished, while the monastic schools suffered a decline. It became very difficult for the monks and nuns to live a celibate life. They had to struggle a lot to keep their monasteries going. Economic support and so forth became much more difficult. Nevertheless, the tradition survived, the Bhikshu lineage survived in Korea, and so did the Bhikshunis survive. However, the tradition of what is called dual ordination. Now this means that when a Bhikshuni receives her higher ordination, the procedure is followed as given in the Vinaya. In the Vinaya, it is prescribed that a Bhikshuni must be ordained by a full complement of bhikshus and a full complement of bhikshunis. This is very clearly outlined in the Bhikshuni Karman. That's the actions, meaning the procedures for the ordination, confession, and so forth. Under the Japanese, as I say, about 100 years ago, the tradition of the dual ordination was discontinued. It was too difficult to assemble a full dual sangha of 10 fully ordained bhikshus and 10 fully ordained bhikshunis. However, due to the letters of a number of Western nuns inquiring about the dual ordination, one highly respected Vinaya master named Iltasanam had taken up the subject of dual ordination in the council of the Chugye order in Korea. This is the leading monastic order that exists in Korea today. In this council, it was decided to reinstate the dual ordination procedure, and Iltasanam himself rewrote the ancient text of the dual ordination ceremony for the modern times. That is, he interpreted the ancient language into a modern style, which was more meaningful, understandable to the monks and nuns today. All of this was unknown to me when I arrived in Korea and got the opportunity to take this ordination. I traveled to Songkwangsa, which is a large monastery in southern Korea. There, I registered for the ordination along with a number of other monks from that monastery, novice monks who were on their way to take bhikshu ordination. We boarded a bus and went to a monastery in Busan called Bomonsa, where the ordination was to take place. As in Taiwan, the ordination is held in a different temple every year. For some time now, the ordination has been nationalized. That means that masters do not give individual ordination to their disciples, but that all the disciples of the various masters all over Korea gather together in one place at one time each year to receive the same training in discipline, deportment, and Vinaya. This has greatly improved the standards of discipline amongst the Sangha in Korea. At my ordination, there were 180 monks being ordained and 120 nuns. There were also more than 400 monks and nuns receiving Shramanera and Shramanarika precepts. That was the beginning of a new tradition for nationalizing the novice ordinations as well. They began giving novice ordinations also to all new novices from all over the country, rather than being ordained simply by one's own teacher. The discipline, the training during the ordination was extremely strict. I was told that it was much stricter for the novices than for the fully ordained. Once one has been ordained as a novice, one trains for at least 5 or 6 years strenuously before one is allowed to become fully ordained. The general schedule of practice in Korea is wake up at 3 o'clock. This is in every temple all over Korea. One awakens to the chanting of a single monk or nun. Extremely melodious, very beautiful, like something from the Pure Land. At 3:30, the nuns, if it's a nunnery, the nuns will gather together. Monks, nunneries, and monasteries and nunneries are strictly separated in Korea. Even during the ordination, we were staying in a nunnery to the back of a monastery, not within the monastery itself. At 3:30, one gathers for a short prayer, which is comprised of the reading of the Heart Sutra, a few other prayers, and prostrations. After that, from 4 o'clock, there's meditation until 6. At 6 o'clock, there's cleanup and breakfast. Probably stemming from the Zen tradition, all actions are considered Dharma practice, and sweeping the temple is considered a very high mode of practice. During the meditation sessions, that's the 3 months in the summer and the 3 months in the winter, immediately after breakfast, one would go for another session of meditation from 7 all the way until the lunch at 11. Before lunch, there is another session of prayers. The food in Korea is extremely simple. In the temples, it consists primarily of rice and pickles and occasionally soup. Meat, fish, and eggs are strictly prohibited. The monks and nuns also do not take milk, cheese, onions, or garlic at all. There's a short break after the lunch for washing, and again they assemble from 2 until 6 for meditation, silent meditation in the Zen style. The Zen style in Korea is also very unique. It consists first of breathing meditations to calm the mind, and secondly of a questioning called what is it? Or who is it? When a nun came to orientate us at the ordination, we asked for some simple meditation practice from her. She called my name, my Korean name, Haegong. I called yes. Who is it? She said. Who is it that answered yes to the name? Now, the questioning of who is it is the main object of meditation practice in Korea. Actually, I feel it resembles very closely the Tibetan practice of checking up the I. Where is the I? In the evening again, there is a short session of prayers and meditation again until 9 o'clock at night. At 9 o'clock, one rests until wake up at 3. The monks and nuns do not leave the monastery for any reason, and the nuns do not either during the meditation seasons, these 3-month seasons. They have almost no personal property. They have their robes and very little else. They share the soap, they share the toothpaste, but not the toothbrush. And at night, when it's time to sleep, they all sleep together in a room. I never saw that a person had a particular area where they lay at night. Everyone just lies down to sleep in meditation and arises there in the morning again for meditation. It's a very intensive, concentrated way of life. The monks and nuns are taken care of. Every need is taken care of. And when you need to go out, say during what they call the free season, that's the spring 3 months and the autumn 3 months, then the monastery gives an envelope with money for your traveling expenses. And then you can visit other temples, and each time you leave, they will give the money for the ongoing expenses. So there's no problem of going out to find work or earning a livelihood. The monks in their monasteries and also the nuns in their nunneries have established a fairly self-sufficient lifestyle. Stemming from China, the large Zen monasteries in Korea continue the practice of growing their own food. During the free seasons of spring, they plant the vegetables. A lot of grain is offered to the monasteries and nunneries, but most of the vegetables are grown themselves, also some of the grains. Then during the autumn free season, they harvest the vegetables and make them into pickles in large jars, and these they eat with their rice throughout the winter. I only stayed about a month in Korea, but during that time I made it a point to visit as many educational institutes as possible and as many nunneries as I could find. One very impressive institute is also a nunnery called Ungmunsa. It's located in central Korea and is a large institute for Buddhist women's studies. It is led by a nun, Myeong-song Sinim, who is highly educated, fluent in Japanese and English as well as Korean. The program of study is 4 years, and the nuns are trained particularly in sutra. It means that in each course, they will take a particular sutra to study. Perhaps the Lotus Sutra for a year, then the Diamond Sutra for a year, and so forth. They also study Vinaya in the institute. I visited other educational institutes in Seoul, which is the capital of Korea. One was an institute for nuns, a women's Buddhist college. Some of the courses are directed by nuns, and some are led by monks, and others by professors from the universities who come to teach, for example, Pali and Sanskrit. It is mostly the nuns who teach Japanese because they were under the Japanese occupation for so many years. The older monks and nuns are all educated in Japanese, and many of them have PhDs from Japanese Buddhist universities. During the free season, one may go on pilgrimage, and it's encouraged also to visit all of the wonderful temples in Korea. There are many temples located in the cities, but many are located in remote areas, very beautiful forests and hillside areas. They're very quiet and very conducive to practice. There are attempts these days to make Buddhism more understandable to the young people. Again, there is a gap between the older generation and the younger generation. The younger generation is getting its education in the school system, and there is a predominance of Christians in Korea today. So the Buddhist education is not given a lot of priority. It's a personal matter. These days, the monks and nuns in the cities are setting up Sunday schools for the children and trying to move into the communities to teach the Dharma, especially to the young people. They're also beginning to work in some social service areas. Then, when it's about time for the winter session or the summer session to begin, the meditation season, they will go to the particular temple that they wish to join for that session. Even though they may belong to a particular temple, they're not required to sit the meditation season at that temple. They may go to any monastery that they like. Therefore, those monasteries that have very good meditation teachers become very popular. This is why Song Kwangsa has become very famous. The master there, who was Ku San Sinim, was very well known as an excellent Zen master, and he taught widely. He was also very kind to Western people and established the first Sangha of Western Buddhists in Korea. When one goes to join this retreat season, the retreat session at a particular monastery, they draw a bamboo. This is similar to the Yarne custom amongst the Tibetans, the 3-month rainy season retreat. They take a bamboo, and if their bamboo is accepted, then they are allowed to sit the meditation season at that particular temple. Then at the end, they give the bamboo back to symbolize that they've completed the retreat. The exact numbers of nuns in Korea I cannot say for sure, but I know that it's more than 5,000. It could be far more, but I don't have an exact count. There are also a large number of novices because, as I mentioned, 5 to 6 years of rigorous training are allowed before one's master would allow you to go for higher education. They feel that it's very important to safeguard the standards of discipline in the Sangha. And one has to work very hard for the privilege of being sent to the higher ordination. One's master may refuse to send you year after year until you are really ready to take it. And as I mentioned, the novice ordination, the nationalized novice ordination, is also extremely strict. I think I was very lucky to get off from that. They had to do prostrations all night, many nights. We could stop at 10, but they said that they were up most of the night. And this is symbolic of purifying one's defilements in readiness for ordination. During the ordination itself, which only required 5 days, we were given training in all of the various actions. That means how to prostrate, how to walk, how to sit, how to kneel, etc. Most of the other nuns knew everything perfectly already. The most difficult part was learning to eat with the bowls. They eat with a system of 4 large bowls, and the service of the food is very formalized, extremely structured. Every movement is prescribed, exactly how to receive the food, first of all how to lay out the bowls, and the chopsticks, and the spoon. Everything is in slow motion and extremely well timed. And you have to do it perfectly. Then the food is served, and then you have to eat very quickly. I was always the last. And then it begins with a prayer, and it ends with a prayer, and then one has to fold all of the bowls and the napkin and everything just so, very carefully, and sit until dismissed. During the ordination also, we received the transmission of the Bhikshuni Pratimoksha, which was given by a Bhikshuni Vinaya master, who is very well known in Korea. After the vows were given, during the whole period, we were not allowed to eat in the evenings. But sometimes they tried to sneak food to us. But we were not allowed to take it. Because they felt sorry for us, because they knew it was very difficult for foreigners to follow all of the strict discipline. There was another Bhikshuni with me, an English Bhikshuni, who wanted to retake her vows. She had been ordained in Korea, but she wanted to retake her vows with a dual procedure, with both sanghas. There were also a few Korean nuns who did this. they retook the vows in order to get the ordination from both bhikshus and bhikshunis. Finally, the day of the ordination came, and in the morning we were called into the courtyard of the nunnery, all in strict order, in single files, for kneeling and bowing and recitations, also circumambulations, like this. And we received the vows from 10 bhikshunis in the morning. Just as we finished receiving the vows in the morning, a gentle rain fell. It was considered a very auspicious omen. After lunch, again, we went to the main temple where the bhikshus were staying, and we went to a second ordination with 10 bhikshu masters. The procedure was quite similar, which we had also rehearsed, with bowing, kneeling, standing, and so forth. Just as we went out to have our photograph taken and to receive the certificate that certified our ordination in a valid ceremony, again, a gentle rain fell. Again, all of the people remarked that this was a very auspicious omen, that the dual ordination procedure had been reestablished in Korea after such a long time. So I felt very fortunate to have this experience. And I hope one day that I'll be able to go back and to sit one of the meditation sessions.
Thank you very much. We do have time, maybe 10 minutes. Venerable Karma Lecture Soma would like to say something on Japan, because this morning we didn't have a representative from Japan, so she'll take about 10 minutes doing that.
We have invited many Japanese nuns to be with us here today, but for various reasons, many of them could not come, and they were very disappointed to miss it. One will be arriving tomorrow, so we will have an opportunity to meet a very great Japanese nun. My own experience in Japan began in 1964 when I visited Japan to go surfing. Because California and Hawaii had become very crowded, I took my surfboard to Japan to ride the waves. And during the winter, I went to a temple to do meditation. So, and it was 10 years later that I went back again and lived in a temple and began training in Zen meditation. And another 10 years when I went back to Japan as a nun. And that was a very special experience. I spent a month in Japan just before going to Korea and visited as many nunneries as I could find. It was quite difficult to find them. There are a large number of nunneries, but they are scattered far and wide. Many of them are occupied by only 2 or 3 nuns. The Dharma is declining somewhat in Japan. Because of material progress, there are less people joining the monasteries and less people becoming nuns. Many of the temples are empty, and there may be just 1 or 2 nuns staying there to keep up, to maintain the temple. They'll continue their own prayers and meditations, but many of them are 70, 80, and 90 years old. I was very saddened to find very few young nuns. In Kyoto itself, there was an institute for training nuns, which had been closed down due to the lack of applicants. Before, it was a flourishing center for study. for the nuns. Just across the street, I visited another temple in which lived 4 nuns. One of them was from the imperial family of Japan. I remarked later to my friend who is a priest that she was wearing a purple robe. He said that it indicated that she was from the imperial family. She was about 40 years old and had been given to this temple as a child because she was an orphan. And she had 2 other young nuns in the temple with her. They also do certain prayers for the benefit of the lay people when they're requested. The temples in Japan have no problem of maintenance in general. Many of the temples are funded by the imperial household in order to maintain them as a Japanese historical monument. I have heard of a large nunnery in Nagoya, where I believe there are more than 100 nuns, where they practice Zen meditation intensively. But unfortunately, Nagoya. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to visit it. There are nunneries scattered all over the country, but many of them are in very remote locations, and some of them are also tourist attractions. A notable one is the Jakko-in in Kyoto. The nun there is very well known. I spoke to her and found that she had written a number of books on Buddhism, trying to present the teachings in modern language for the young people. Since then, I have heard that a number of young women have taken ordination under her. Apparently, there was a Bhikshuni lineage in Japan long ago. Buddhism came into Japan in the middle of the 8th century, and there are many stories about the establishment of the Bhikshu lineage in Japan. They had to send for the Vinaya masters from China. It was a very difficult process where the ships sank, were lost in storms, were arrested, and so forth, until finally they got a great Chinese master to Japan to give the first full ordination for monks. There was certain opposition in Japan to this procedure. There were those who said, we can ordain ourselves. And there was another faction who said, no, we must accord by the standards of the Vinaya. We must have 10 bhikshus in order to give the ordination properly. And in the end, this school won out, and 10 bhikshus were brought from China under the sponsorship of the emperor. A huge ordination platform was erected, and hundreds of bhikshus were ordained at that time. The emperor also took the bodhisattva ordination himself. The origin of the nun sangha in Japan is unclear. I've talked to one Korean professor who said that the first ordained beings in Japan were 5 bhikshunis. But I do not have the historical documentation for this. He said that the first 5 fully ordained beings were nuns who were ordained by Korean masters, and that the Bhikshuni lineage entered Japan this way, through Korea. It's possible because much of Japanese culture, though originating on the mainland of China, passed to Japan through Korea and took on a Korean taste. At the present time, I was unable to determine exactly what ordinations the nuns there have. Certainly they have 10 precepts, and certainly they have bodhisattva precepts. It is doubtful that they have bhikshuni precepts. In contrast to the monks, the nuns keep the Vinaya very strictly. I have never heard of a case of a nun getting married. This is common practice amongst what is loosely termed monks in Japan, but amongst all of the nuns that I met and all of the monks that I talked to, the nuns keep very strict discipline. The nuns are strictly vegetarian, and as I say, they live their whole life in the monastery, never giving up their ordination and never marrying. The training for nuns in Japan these days is done more or less on a personal basis with individual masters, now that this institute has closed down. But some of the nuns do go for higher education to the universities. I saw a number of nuns who were studying at the universities, at the bus stop, in their full robes. And I think that this is a very good sign. The discipline of training under a master in Japan is extremely strict. One does not have freedom to leave the nunnery without permission. All activity is strictly governed according to very careful rules and regulations, and behavior toward the teacher is very formalized. I think that there is a lot of work to be done in Japan. I believe that the time will come soon when young women will seek an alternative to the hectic, busy, materialistic lifestyle that is so common in Japan today. I think that slowly there will be women who decide to enter the monastic life. And I believe that already the numbers of young people are increasing in the monasteries and the nunneries. Those who have already gone the full cycle of material so-called advantages and have seen the futility of those activities and are coming back to the Dharma. They have the advantage that the canon is already translated into Japanese and that they still have living masters and thousands of beautiful monasteries and temples where they can stay. So we really must try to encourage the young Japanese nuns and the young Japanese women. And even those who cannot be here today will receive news of the conference. And they're very anxious to hear what happens here this week in Bodh Gaya. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation on the nuns from Japan. I would like to introduce the next speaker, namely myself, Chatsuman Kavil Singh. My interest has been on the ordination of Buddhist women for the last 30 years, I would say. And my academic study, my research is also on the pratimoksha of the nuns. And my book is on the comparative study of the Bhikkhuni Patimokkha. In Pali, you would say Bhikkhuni. In Sanskrit, it's Bhikshuni. So I just mention it so that if you are familiar with one tradition, you will not be confused when I keep going on back and forth. And my work in the last 2 years, I have started out this newsletter, which is the newsletter on International Buddhist Women's Activities. Surprisingly, I started this in November '84, the very same time when Ayya Khema started her center, using the very same name, not knowing each other. Ayya Khema started her center called International Buddhist Women's Center in Sri Lanka on the very same month and same year. So it's a happy coincidence. As I cannot get any nun from Thailand, so I'm up here to speak as representing nuns from Thailand. I will have to take you back in Thai history a little bit in order for you to understand our problem, or the nuns' problem in Thailand. We started our kingdom 700 years ago. From then up till now, we do not have Bhikshuni Sangha. When we started our first kingdom, that's called Sukhothai period, or Sukhothai dynasty. it's recorded that women and men both can practice Buddhism side by side. Like on Uposatha Day, they would observe the 8 precepts together. They would go and offer flowers and do chanting together. But there was no mentioning of nuns. There is something here to pay interest. Why is that they never asked for full ordination, which happened in Sri Lanka? As soon as Buddhism went there, the women were so interested, and they themselves came forward and asked for their right in Buddhism. But it never happened in Thailand. So we have to look for the reason to explain this phenomena. In early Ayutthaya period, that's about 500 years ago, the Thai army attacked Cambodia and captured the capital of Cambodia. By doing that, we have taken the Cambodian influence, namely Brahmanical influence, which that in Brahmanical society, women are very much lower than the men. And that's what happened in our history. From then onward, the Thai women did not enjoy as much freedom in society, in education, as much as the men do. This carried on for centuries, and this, I think, is the main reason why Thai women never came forward to ask for Bhikshuni ordination, because they were being suppressed under Brahmanical influence. We do have records from Western priests who happened to visit Thailand during Ayutthaya period. They mention about local nuns called Machi, spelling J-I. Ma meaning ma, like mother. So you can call them Chi, or you can call them Ma. These Machi, they received 8 precepts. Some of them received 10 precepts. They wear white robes and with shaved heads. They are not samaneri. Even some of them may have 10 precepts, but they are not samaneri. There is something happened here. About 50 years ago, there were cases of certain women wanted to become Bhikshuni and had actually taken Bhikshuni precepts without Bhikshuni Sangha. So the committee of elders passed out a rule for monks that monks are not allowed to give samaneri or Bhikshuni ordination. So there you are. You may be receiving 10 precepts, you may be receiving 8 precepts, but you are not called samaneri. You are not Shramanerika. So in Thailand, we don't have neither the Bhikshuni nor the Shramanerika. The Machi, you have, most of them would wear white, some of them would be wearing brown. And they don't call themselves Machi, they call themselves Dharmacharini, one who practices Dharma. But the number is very limited. You can almost count them on your fingers. So this Machi, we talk about the 4 groups of Buddhists. That is the Bhikshu, Bhikshuni, lay men and lay women. These Machis, they are neither of these. They are hanging in between somewhere. But if you ask the monk, they would tell you that these Machis are considered upasika. That means lay women. But they are not lay women. See, that's why I said that they are hanging in between. And they have been treated with double standard. I'll give you an example of this double standard. If they go to vote, if there is election, they go to vote, the people will tell them they are ordained, they don't have right to vote, okay? But when they take the train, they have to pay the full fare because they are not ordained. This is the kind of double standard that is going on. And the Machis themselves, they said, oh, we are seeking nirvana, we don't fight for this kind of thing. So this kind of problems bugs the lay woman like me, you know. I cannot tolerate. Either you be one or you be other. You know, you don't double standard them. So I keep talking to the monks, and the monks don't like me very much on this issue. In our study, in our research on the Machis, we found that more than 80% of them came from farmers' background. That means they are economically very poor. Okay. Second, more than 80% of them have only 4 years of compulsory education, which means they are educationally very low, very poor. When you don't have money, when you don't have economic status, when you don't have education status, you do not have social status. So that is our problem. Now you expect these Machis to be the model, spiritual model of the society, when society don't even listen to them. It just wouldn't work. You know, so we have to do something about that. What do they do? What do these Machis do? Most of them would be living in the poorest part of the temple, cooking, cleaning the temple ground, cleaning the dishes, and do things like that. I'm giving you the extreme view, extreme picture. Some of them are doing very well in their education. Some of them found a way to come to India, and I know at least 2 of them with a PhD degree from India. But again, it's very small number, you know, so small that it cannot be, the power is not strong enough to move anything in the structure of Machi at all. Now they have started Institute of Thai Machi, which they said very clearly meant only for the white robes. That is, these white robes are under the supervision of the monks. So there you're stuck. So you have to go according to what the monks tell you. Those brown robes, those 10 precepts, Dharmacharini, and all those outlaw nuns are not included in this institute. So I have given the figure in my paper that there are about 20,000 Machis in Thailand. That figure I got it from Department of Religious Affairs, which the secretary of the Institute of Machi denied. She said it couldn't be true, because those Machis who have registered with the institute were only 4,000. So it couldn't be more than 10,000 in the total, in the whole Thailand. And yes, ordination, how do they get their vows or their precepts? Because Machis are poor, they cannot afford to invite many monks or many nuns to come to the ordination. So usually they would receive their precepts or receive their 8 vows from one monk, or she may receive the vows or the precepts from one Machi. Usually it's the head of the nunnery. So that is the usual case. And suppose if she would like to give back her vows, she can do that also by going back to her master, going back to her preceptor, and return the vows. And the next day she'll be wearing skirt. I would like to talk about the objection about the Bhikshuni in Thailand. What are the main objections? Why the Thai society do not accept Bhikshuni? They said we never had lineage in Thailand. So what? We never had this discotheque, but we open our arms and we receive them, you know, we welcome them. So we never had Bhikshuni Sangha in Thailand. So what? If we want it, we should have it. If we think that it's good thing, it's good for society. So the reason is really not logical. But there are many things in life that are not logical, but yet it continues to prevail. And then they said that, all right, you have Bhikshuni in China. And I keep telling them that those Bhikshuni in China received their vows from Sri Lankan nuns who are your sisters, your Theravadin sisters. So what happened there? They said, no, 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 the Chinese are Mahayana and we are the Theravada. We don't mix. We don't mix, like oil and water, we never mix. I keep telling them that the milk and water you can mix. And the most important thing that many people still confuse is that what is the difference between Mahayana and Theravada? The difference is in the interpretation, philosophical interpretation of the Dharma, the teaching. That is when you have Mahayana and Theravada. But in the Vinaya or in the ordination lineage, it is the same. It is the same. I can assure you that because I have studied, especially on the Vinaya. During Ashoka's time, you have 18 schools, split out Theravada, subdivided or subset into 12 schools, and Mahasanghika, 6 schools. The vows or the Pratimoksha that you are following now, the Chinese following now, is Dharmagupta, which is subset from Theravada. So there you are. The Chinese nuns are following Theravadin vows. Okay, so you cannot say that they are Mahayana anymore because we are talking about ordination lineage. You can have the different interpretation on the Dharma, but the Vinaya is correct. Then, again, it's a question of being logical or not logical. They would rather prefer to be illogical to suit their own prejudice. I'm glad I'm a lay woman. I can say anything. I mean, that's one of the reasons I don't want to be ordained, because once I'm ordained, I'm not supposed to be talking all these kind of things. Yes, and then there are some what you call misunderstanding in regard to certain history that happened in Buddhism. For example, I just give you a few examples. We always hear them saying that, oh, Buddha never wanted Bhikshuni Sangha because these women kept pestering him. That's why he had to give the Bhikshuni Sangha ordination. The Buddha hesitated when his aunt asked for ordination. He hesitated. Mind you this point, 3 times. Finally, when Ananda asked him again, and Buddha had to accept that women as well as men can receive spiritual salvation. That's why Buddha accepted women into the order. There was also another instance that Buddha hesitated. Namely, when he became enlightened, wasn't he hesitating to preach? He hesitated to preach. But we never questioned that the Dharma that he preached was wrong. So there you are being illogical, you are being double standard again. So I would like to speak to our nuns, both Shamanera, Shamanerika, and the Bhikshunis, that we must be aware of all these problems. And when they tell you that, you have reason to give them. Again, in Kurudharma, when a woman comes and asks for ordination, the very first thing she has to accept is the 8th Kurudharma. The very first one that bugs everyone very much is that a nun, a Bhikshuni ordained for 100 years, have to bow down to a monk ordained for 1 day. Okay? So what happened? In my country, when my mother is a Bhikshuni, happened to be the only Bhikshuni, sometimes when she traveled to rural areas, and then we introduce her to the monk and telling him that this is Bhikshuni so-and-so, the very first thing he would say, "Oh, how is that she's not bowing to me?" So there is a story, a further story that you have to counteract. There is a story of very naughty monks, 6 naughty monks, always these 6 naughty monks. He was pulling up his robe, and making nuisance so that the nuns would look at them. This was reported to the Buddha. The Buddha said that from this rule that a fully ordained nun should pay respect to the monk, providing he is respectful enough. So there you are. Whether he is 1 day ordained or 100 years ordained, if he is not respectful enough, don't have to bow to him. I mean, there are points like that, that we have to really study. You don't take things at the surface. You have to go into the social context and go into the stories behind it, why this rule is laid down. And I think what we need is the new interpretation of all these points that is regarding the nuns. Especially the nuns, you must realize, that there are ways of explaining things, and don't think that Buddha is all that narrow-minded. And I think if he was alive, he would have changed many more rules, and the monks will have to be observing many more rules regarding nuns. So, in my country, because there is no Bhikshuni, so, in the monks' Pratimoksha, there are many rules in regard to Bhikshuni. So I challenge them that you are not observing the 227 rules. Why? Because you don't have the Bhikshuni. If you want to observe 227 rules, you have to have the Bhikshuni Sangha. I think I'll end my talk here. And I'm back to chairperson now. Questions are welcome.
This is a message of greetings.
There is a greeting from President of the Austrian Buddhist Association. Here it goes. Greetings to all. The Austrian Buddhist Association wishes to express its joy for this historic meeting. This meeting of Buddhist nuns from all over the world has been long overdue, and we wish you success and hope this to be the beginning of the tradition. It is with regret that our small country will not be represented officially, but hope this to be different in the future. Yours in the Dharma, Genro Budela, President of the Austrian Buddhist Association. Thank you.
There are a couple of questions here. The first one regarding the Korean tradition. During 3 months of summer and winter retreat, do you do your own individual retreat or is it a group retreat? The meditations are done in groups. Everyone meets together in one hall and meditates together. The early morning meditations may be individual, but as I say, they don't really have an individual living space.
Do they all do the same practice? Same practice?
In the case of the dual ordination, did you have an abbess and a female chief instructor as well as the 10 bhikshus and 10 bhikshunis. The female chief instructor, or the abbot, is normally the one who shaves your head. This is the case both in Korea and in China. So this is the person that one trains under. And goes to the nationalized ordination, the grand ordination ceremony. Then there are 10 bhikshus and 10 bhikshunis. In each group of 10, there are three chief bhikshus and 3 chief bhikshunis. One is the acharya.
Kamacharya.
Preceptor, the chief the preceptor. So, and the central three, and the other 7 are termed witnesses, as His Holiness mentioned yesterday. The 3 main ordination masters and the 7 witnesses. In the case of monks, these 3 main instructors, or 3 chief ordination masters, must have been ordained for 10 years before they are allowed to give the bhikshu ordination. In talking with masters in Korea and Taiwan, I found out that for the nuns, they are required to be ordained for 12 years, these 3 main ordination masters. I could not ascertain that the 7 witnesses had to have been ordained for any certain length of time. Apparently it's not established. We have to do more research into the commentaries, the Vinaya commentaries in all languages, Pali, Tibetan, Chinese, and so forth, to get these facts. We have a lot of work ahead. From what lineage or from what source did the Korean tradition derive for the re-establishment of the dual ordination? Well, the Korean tradition in general stems from China, and the ordination ceremony, the dual ordination ceremony, also can be traced to the Chinese texts. The Koreans as well as the Japanese rely on the Chinese canon, and they have certain explanatory texts in which Korean explanation is inserted in order to be able to read and understand the ancient texts in Korean language.
I think the next question goes to Dr. Karuna.
Yes, the first questions were what was the percentage of Christians. In Vietnam, the percentage of Christians was 10 years ago approximately 10 to 15%. The Buddhist population being, some people saying 80%, some people saying 85%. The refugees who came out of Vietnam, the percentage of Christians, and that is almost totally Catholic, was 40%. You see, so from going from 10 to 15, actual population of Vietnam, 40% of, however, were refugees. That is accounted by the fact that they were the establishment government primarily, because the difficulties that occurred in Vietnam in the 60s and the 70s occurred because it was basically a Catholic government and a Buddhist population. And the tremendous uprising that occurred in Vietnam occurred because the government, going to receive papal visits or emissaries from Rome, during the time of Vesak, would not allow Buddhist flags or processions to occur. So you see, the Buddhists of Vietnam have been fighting suppression for some time, whether it was their own people or whether it was later a communist socialist regime. Christian influence, tremendous Christian influence in the culture of Vietnam. I shouldn't really say Christian influence, tremendous French influence in the culture of Vietnam. And as I mentioned, the hierarchy of government was primarily, but not exclusively, made up of Christians. Yes. Actually, that comes from a very old Chinese tradition, I believe, wearing that, I think, back in, I'm not sure what dynasty, maybe Tang Dynasty, I do not recall. The bhikkshunis wore that type of headdress. The interesting thing about Vietnam is that those that came from a Chinese background adhere more strictly to the old Chinese way of dress, chanting, etc., than the Chinese do today.
So you mean to say those with the headdress are specifically Chinese?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, there are some of them in Germany.
Yes, and of course it does remind you of a Catholic sister, but it really came from the old tradition, I believe, from China. You did bring up an important point about the dress. The ordinary color of dress for the nun, particularly if she's a young one, is gray. The daily color is gray. The monk also may wear gray, but he also may wear brown. Ordinarily, it's only the older bhikkhunis who may wear brown. The color gray is considered to be very appropriate for women because it is the color of incense smoke, and it is aligned with the idea of the compassionate Kwanteambotat, Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. So that's a much more popular color. In ceremonies, both may wear yellow, but I have also found that in temples where there's a very conservative sort of element, the nuns are afraid to wear yellow. The abbot about it, he'll say, oh, it's according to the nuns, but I know very true. He may not overtly say, but in my rather wide experience in how the dynamics work between the sanghas, I know what is actually the cause of it. By the way, that does not occur in all of the temples. Is there persecution of Buddhists now? Do you mean in Vietnam? Persecution of Buddhists. It's very severe in Vietnam.
I have a friend who is a refugee worker at Bangkok, and she says that this is what I was just writing, that even though Vietnam is a Buddhist country, even now, right now, there's still very little Buddhist people coming, most of them are Roman Catholics. Is this some type of plot in the Vietnamese government or American government or in the Vatican?
I don't know what the answer is to that. Almost all of the people coming out of Vietnam now, unless they're still trying to go over on boats, which of course is very dangerous, is by family relocation, and that's a terrible situation. It takes 5 years or more.
It will fly away.
I do know Buddhist families that have been relocated and joined together, but exactly what's going on, I do not know. Coming out of Korea is a real problem. Preferential treatment if you're a Christian, and much less so if you're a Buddhist.
Is it going to be long? Which nun is it?
Warring factions, this is the most severe problem I think that the Vietnamese community abroad has. That Vietnam really was divided into northern, central, and southern. And these alliances still remain.
What does it say?
And I probably know more than any other person who's at least a Sangha member about the Vietnamese Sangha and what is occurring in the
It's
church.
asking for donation or something.
And I'm frequently involved in people coming to me, to act as a mediator. And I can tell you that after living with Vietnamese for 10 years, I feel that I really do not understand most of the time what is the true problem. I only know what they state the problem is, and I know, the form that it's taken here. But the old alliances are so strong. Vietnam differences and trust each other. They do not. And that's a very severe problem among the Vietnamese, is this real lack of trust. And they're very political people also. And you put all of that together and there are real problems at times.
Another question concerning the Korean tradition. Is anyone admitted in Korean monasteries and nunneries? No, the answer to this would be that first the people are screened carefully to see whether they are suitable to the monastic life. If they are judged to be suitable for joining the monastic life, then first of all they have to serve duty in the kitchen for 6 months. It's extremely rough. One is at the very bottom of the monastic hierarchy. You have to do anything that anyone asks you to do, and the work is very difficult. And if one lasts this training, only are they allowed to take the novice precepts. The dropout rate is very great. It's the same for monks as for nuns. Next, are there any foreign Buddhist monks or nuns? Yes, there are some foreign Buddhist monks and nuns in Korea. The largest center for them was Songkwangsa, the temple I mentioned, which is located in the south of Korea, the south of South Korea, where the Master Kusansinam admitted a large number of Western disciples. There are still monks there from various countries, Sri Lanka, France, and various countries. They do come and go a lot, as Western monks and nuns have a tendency not to stay a long time in any one place. There was a French nun who stayed in Songkwangsa for over 10 years and was a translator for the master. But now all of the nuns there have either disrobed or gone back to their countries. The monks also, many of them are in transition. Now I hear that there are other monasteries that are considering admitting Westerners. Are there Shramaneras and Shramanerikas in Japan nowadays? How many precepts do they observe? The monks that I spoke to in Japan say that they observe 10 precepts while they are in the monastery. Especially the training in the Zen monasteries is very severe. The discipline is very strict. And while they are in the monastery itself, they're expected to observe 10 precepts as well as many, many training rules. Whether they have a valid lineage of Shramanera and Shramanerika is something that no one has been able to determine. We will ask more questions when Reverend Kondo comes tomorrow. But as far as I could not find out for sure, when I asked them what ordinations have you taken, they said, oh, we've taken so many ordinations. But I couldn't find exactly which ones. Bodhisattva for sure. And as I say, the nuns observe the rules, at least the 10 precepts.
Is there Shikshamana in Vietnamese tradition, and does anybody know whether Shikshamana ordination is in all traditions every time necessary, or only in the age from 18 to 20? Yes, there is a Shikshamana in Vietnamese tradition. I believe ordinarily it occurs during the Shramanerika time, and usually it's not separated really out from that time. So as far as being actually a specific ordination just for Shikshamana, I do not think that exists. It did not in my case. I was told when I took Shramanerika, this also is, you must obey the Shikshamana rules now. And these two go together and they are inseparable. Ordinarily, of course, they were set up for like age 18 to 20, But in Vietnamese tradition, I believe it is believed that it should occur at any age. So I would say yes. I know that in some traditions, this Shikshamana sort of thing is beginning to have a little bit less importance. But I know that we had a lot of training in Vinaya, in English language, and it was made very clear to the nuns that in order to make sure that we had a valid ordination, because we were in a new country, the master was very strict upon certain of these legalistic sorts of aspects.
Yes, I can add a little more to Shikamana. Shikamana is the 5 precepts, but the 3rd precept, instead of Kame Sumichachara Veramani Sikapatang Samadhiyami, that is, in the 5 precepts, you are allowed to have sexual connection, but with your own husband or wife. Whereas in this Shikamana vows, this one you have to change it into Abramacharya Veramani Sikapatang Samadhiyami. That is, you have no sexual relationship at all. And then you add the 6th one, Vikala Pochana Veramani Sikapatang Samadhiyami. That is, you don't eat after 12. So that's Shikamana's vow, which in most of the Theravadian countries, as soon as you become Shramanirika, you cover that already, or you are observing even more than Shikamana. So in most cases, they would prefer to be Shramanirika and then Bhikshuni.
There seems to be a difference between the different schools of Theravada, because the Mulasavastivadina express different explanations on the Shikshamana rules. There seems to be 8 rules. They are quite different.
In the Vietnamese tradition, there are 8 rules. 8 rules to be followed for the Shikshamana. Yes, 8 special rules. In the United States, in the work of both men and women, and this occur in some of the other Vietnamese temples because they rather sort of like this idea. We started requiring all ordinees to spend 1 or 2 years with 8 vows before we would even begin to consider whether or not they should receive a Shramanera or Shramanarika. And I think that that is a very sort of practical thing. It's a helpful way of weeding out those who are not, really strict. Particularly since in Mahayana, once one achieves full ordination, one can never remove the robes again, and to do so means that you die. You see, so it's preferable, you see, to do that. And so actually, we are giving everybody 8 vows for a period of several years, whether they're male or female.
Are there any more questions from the floor? You can write it in a piece of paper and hand it to us. While we are waiting for more questions, there is one question, or rather remark, which is made in the morning by Dr. Lotte Moser. She made a conclusion that nuns in Asia derived from Burma. Is that correct? Okay, in the Theravada tradition. Yes, I would like to make some remark to that. I do not agree or disagree with her remark, but I just have a point to make that in our history, the Burmese and the Thais, we had been at war for so long that I don't think the Thais would have taken the nuns' ordination knowingly from the Burmese, but they could have taken it indirectly, say through Cambodia or through something. But it just came to my mind, just my first reaction that no, it couldn't be. This is not academic reaction at all.
Introduced many features of Burmese Buddhism there that are there at the same time. I have about the Burmese Thailand, but only the features that are seen in Wat Phang Nam. You see the ones that wore the white robe. But before that, I lived with the Burmese nuns, and to me they were almost the same, except that they didn't dye their robes. You see, except that they didn't dye their robes. And when you know about how this order came about in Burma, under Rinpoche. You see, it is simply these two nuns, Siakin and Melnape. One is Deva Dinda, and the other one, she was learned. And they came from India, Manipur. They were taken as prisoner of war, but because they were children, the Burmese adopted them. Their parents died and they adopted them, they brought them up, they were bright. And when they went ahead into the forest, they just did it. And they just happened to have the good luck that the prince who became the king was pious and admired them. And he sponsored them and he invited them into the palace. And then even the queens and the princesses joined that order, and so it spread all over Burma. And even what they have in Sri Lanka is there now, and I don't see any factual difference. And there was a stage in that development when they dare not use the Sangha color; they had it white. So to my mind, it seems that what spread to Thailand got stopped at that stage for some reason or other. I don't say this is the truth, but it is. I would like to inquire further about this. Find out how it actually works.
There is a discussion in Thailand whether the word Machi is at all Buddhist. Because if the word Ji, someone explained to me that it could be Ajivika. Ajivika is non-Buddhist.
How do you spell it in Thai?
Ji.
Yes, if you transcribe that into Roman characters, how do you spell it? Is it CH?
No, it's not CH, it's Ji.
You see, because the Burmese nuns are called made a Sila Shin, but another one is made B. And B is simply Sila. You see, the L is silent and the B is pronounced as Sila. So made B and made G doesn't seem to be very different.
Yeah, so
I mean, this is just I may be wrong.
Yes, so that because we have never had real study on the Machis, even the word Machi itself is controversial.
But
Some of the nuns, some of the Machis would say that no, Chi is from the word China. It's a short E, Jina, Jina. It means the conqueror. That is, someone who conquered the Kilesha. But on the other hand, someone would say no, it's from the word Ajivika, long E. Ajivika is completely non-Buddhistic. And if it's non-Buddhistic, why are we calling our Buddhist nuns with non-Buddhistic terms? So there again, it's controversial.
you see, when I was at Wat Phra Nam, I didn't know Thai and they didn't know English. So how do we communicate? I was trying to speak Pali, a few words. And so of course, the monk had to somehow, and they introduced these people to me as Upasika, the white ones. I said, oh, I see. So we are calling them Buddha. We call them Deku. But I think if I compare it with the upper Burma context, the cultural relationship seems to be very close. And we had I've had very close discussions with Mrs. Devoja. And she has sort of, now I know what she has known about Sri Lanka, and that fits with the same something I forgot.
Yes.
I think that in the Theravada tradition,
She would have known her because you have to register with her.
In West Germany, which is under the patronage of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And since 1980, under the guidance of a Tibetan master, Geshe Thupten Nawang. She was ordained by him as Tramaneriga in 1981 and received full ordination as Bhikshuni in 1985. I believe she's the first German Bhikshuni that is fully ordained nun and maybe first nun of Tibetan tradition in Europe. Since 1981, she has been doing traditional Tibetan philosophy studies with daily debates in Tibetan language. She speaks beautiful language for those who have known her. Will take 15 years with examinations every year, and she's having a diploma.
We get a diploma as a Dharma teacher when we can really finish after 15 years. It's a kind of special Western education program we have nowadays in Germany.
So you are still on that, on these 15 years.
Yes.
So, So here you are, Jamba Sedran.
So here you are, Jamba Sedran.
So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So here you are, Jamba Sedran. So
for 10 years. It is? Okay. So I can just give some ideas about my experiences I got to practice Vinaya, especially in the West. For my feeling, and this might seem to some people a little bit hard decision, but for my opinion, nowadays I couldn't find up to now one country, one Buddhist country, where Vinaya, for my opinion, in the way it should be. Because for my opinion, in Theravadan tradition, it has become a little bit too much rigid. And in Mahayana traditions, for my opinion, it has become too lax. And sorry, but if you call me to come here, I have to say it frankly. You know, I was thinking a lot about what are all these many rules, why the Buddha has taught all these many small rules about outer behavior. And I was also discussing a lot about this topic with my teacher. And he had to be sometimes very patient with me, I think. Because usually, you know, what I learned up to now, the most important thing in Buddhism is to have a good heart, and that the most important thing is our mind and not this outer behavior. But by having all this kind of discussions, I recognized that it is really also very important to have a basis, to have a kind of moral discipline as being a basis of our daily practice. And for myself, it is very helpful to have this kind of robes, and I really believe that it is the best way one can practice Buddhism. But only if you really try to keep it in a way like the Buddha wanted us to do it. Sorry for my English, I hope you can understand. But, you know, I think it is something which should make our life very easy. Sometimes if I come to Asia, and I think that might be also a problem for people who are living, for example, in the usual traditional monasteries, it is very difficult to find it as having an easy life, as being ordained, because so many people are showing so much respect to you. They are coming, they are giving you many things, making donations, and always how do you say, they are behaving very kind to you and very devoted sometimes. Huh? So for my own thing, I felt sometimes very ashamed, you know, because I know that I'm not that great practitioner, and people are serving you like this, especially if you are from Western country. It's very difficult, I feel. And if you come to the West, it's completely the opposite. People are always coming to you and say, why have you become a nun? Very strange. You can't deal with your emotions. Do you suppress anything? Or I met really a lot of people in Germany, for example, and also in other European countries, who think that nowadays all the Dharma teachers should better come from the lay community, because it's easier for them to communicate. But I also can't agree to this point, because I think it's very good to have also lay teachers. I really think it's good to have them. But I think it's very difficult, you know, by yourself. If you have a family, and if you have a job in a Western country, you can't make extensive studies in Buddhism. It's really impossible. You can't. I know many people who tried up to now, and they can only manage if they also stay by their own, if they have a kind of brahmacharya vow, stay together in the Dharma community. Okay, so I feel it necessary that we can get a kind of balance, you know, and I see a great chance now for the new growing up Bhikshuni Sangha, because Bhikshuni Sangha in the most countries except China and Korea and so on, this kind of traditions, we don't have up to now. So if we are going to build it up now new, we can try to find out in the Vinaya again and check again ourselves and our own traditions what Vinaya practice should be like, you know. That I think that is very important. For example, you know, like touching money, you know, that's a real problem, I think, in all countries. Nowadays, but not touching money is really nearly impossible for all of us. We can't do. And but as my teacher explained to me, as long as we don't are touching money for our own purpose, but for the purpose of spreading the Dharma and helping our temples and helping the centers, it should be okay. So many people think we should change the rules, we should change Vinaya, but I don't agree to this point. I think it's just a question of having another interpretation of the Vinaya. And there are many things like this. For example, may I give example in Germany? When I came back from China, I was not allowed any longer to touch a man. So it's one of the 8 chief rules of a bhikshuni not to touch a man. So I asked my teacher. Well, that's they say in the Chinese Vinaya, they say between the armpits and the knees, but in the Tibetan tradition, the arms are also included in the Mula Savastivadin. So they say usually. Anyway, they say in all countries that usually a nun should not touch a man. That's because it's always a danger that you come very close to one of the parajikas, and if you, it's like killing an animal, for example, or something like this. Also, you can become expelled by the order if you do it with attachment. That's the point. So I understood that it is really better not to bring yourself into such a difficult situation and really not to touch a man. But then, if people are Buddhists, you can explain to them, it's quite easy. But if new people are coming, for example, to a center, and they are interested into Buddhism, and they walk in, in Germany we always shake hands, and they come in and give you your hand, and you just let them stay like they are, and don't respond. It's very unpolite. It's very difficult. And then the next thing you have to explain, because you can't just leave the situation like it is, and you have to say, well, I'm not allowed to touch a man, and then you have at once this kind of border, you have a wall and you can't go through it because people feel very strange about it, because they are already a little bit afraid coming into a temple first time. They don't know what the strange Buddhists are doing, but they are interested, and then you are setting up at once this kind of wall. It's really impossible. We can't do it. Excuse me? Well, that's usually also not okay. Also not the father. I think with kids it's a little different, but anyway, you shouldn't. So that's another problem. I know when I went first time to my family, I really tried to keep these rules, and I felt this responsibility. But slowly, then next time I got the opportunity, His Holiness came to Germany, I went to him and asked him, so what can I do about this? And he said, well, be patient. And for the time, maybe I think it should be okay if people come to you and give you the hand, then you respond, but otherwise just leave it like it is. And you don't make any effort by yourself to give the hand, but if they give it to you for the time, you respond, and then slowly, if you meet people again and again, then you can try slowly to explain to them. But maybe some Western nuns would think, well, then maybe we just leave it in the West. We don't take any more attention to this kind of rule. But I think this would be also not okay, because this would be the first step for degeneration of Vinaya practice. So, and I think this is that is very difficult. Some people, I think, for example, another problem. We have, I must speak mainly about the West because I have not much experience about Asia. If you come, I lost the point. Well, for example, some of our monks in our center, they tried very, very strict to keep always wearing robes. But it happened several times that they became really attacked by kinds of punks and skinheads and all this kind of movements we have in the West. And it was really very difficult, because we know that that is also those people who are attacking them, they are collecting a lot of bad karma, isn't it? And so slowly His Holiness gave to the monks from the Tibetan tradition, for the women, we don't have the problem for the women, it's only for the men, because wearing a shirt in the West is very, very strange for men. Skirt. Skirt. So His Holiness gave the permission that if they go outside, they can take off the robes. But I know that in Asian countries, this would mean you have gone out of the order. But I don't agree to this point, because the vow is in our mind, and as long as that we have not broken this parajika, then we have still the vow in our mind. Having always wearing the robes is a kind of minor rule. It's not one of the main rules. But I see now slowly, this was a permission in a special case, but now slowly, and I worry really about this point, I see many new monks becoming ordained in the West and wearing from the first day again and again levis and wearing quite long hair and sunglasses, and they don't look like monks at all, I trust that they are keeping their rules, but for me, it's very difficult to see the difference, the difference between a layman and a monk any longer. And I think that's not proper at all. So I would suggest it would be better to find a possibility to get some different robes for the West. I know it's a lot of work and I'm not so much interested to take part in this arrangement for myself, but maybe it's our responsibility, just to find a kind of robe which is okay in respect to the Vinaya, and it's also okay for the West to wear. And I think we have to make a change in this way, but if we just let it go on like it is in the moment, I see that what lasted for centuries in Asia, we can destroy in the West in 50 years. I'm worrying about this point. We have to be very careful about this, because again and again people think it's just not any longer important to keep this kind of Vinaya rules. And also I see nowadays young monks, from the big monasteries here in India, and who have no problems to travel in robes, they also start to wear lay clothes if they go from one monastery to the other. It's very strange, and that is our Western influence. And we have to be really very careful about this, because we cannot destroy this very good and necessary rules. And I'm very happy that we come here together and that we have this opportunity to discuss such kind of things, because there are so many details, and nobody can do by himself. And I feel that it would be very helpful to have a kind of international committee, working on this kind of points. For example, it's the same thing, making this confession sutras in a foreign language is very difficult. So I started for myself to translate the Pratimokkha Sutra into German. But then, I see if I come here, and we had this great opportunity yesterday to do it all together, we are doing it in English. It's not useful for me to make it in German, because then always when we come together in Europe, in different countries, then we have to do it again in a different way, and we know we should learn it by heart. So you cannot. It's difficult enough and nearly impossible to learn it in one language, but but to do it in many languages is impossible. So I would feel very pleased, if we could get together a kind of committee of Vinaya masters. And I really think nobody of us is so much trained that he can do it alone by himself. I think we should really have a kind of committee of Vinaya masters of the different traditions, working together and finding something what we can do all together from the different traditions, because the Bhikshuni Sangha is now a complete new thing, and so we have this great chance to do it more international. And that's my wish, and I really would like to go more into detail during this conference about these points, because I feel very alone in these things. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much for very thoughtful reflections on the Vinaya, which is very important, I think. How are we going to do about? And I think that's one of the main reasons why we would like to have international organization for Buddhist nuns, so that we can have something in unity, and everyone everywhere will be doing something together. I have been very upset seeing some of the questionnaires given by Western nuns and Western Buddhist women from the States. Some of them are ready to give up the Vinaya. And that's the thing, that last word that Buddha gave was, I don't choose any leader for you, but I have already given you Dharma and Vinaya. That's your teacher. Once you are ready to give up Vinaya, I don't think you can have any Sangha. And I don't think you can have any Buddhist community after that. So we have to be really very careful on these topics. Our next speaker would be Venerable Karuna, whom all of you have already known her from yesterday. So
these subjects that have been raised today are topics that have been are being discussed a great deal in the United States, to look at the adaptation of Buddhism into an American culture. And so some of these very points that you brought up are things that we have been discussing ourselves. I'm very liberal in many things, but I'm rather conservative in Vinaya. Because, first of all, it is not enough to only know Pratimoksha. That is totally unsatisfactory. Because if you only know Pratimoksha, you cannot tell what the history was of why a rule was set down. And you cannot determine if a rule has been broken if you only know the rule. You must know the conditions under which it occurred. And a rule cannot be broken unless the deed is complete and unless the intent is there. And there is a means to do it. So even if we look at the Parajikas, there are occasions when of course, the very first rule that was laid down was a sexual rule. And there were many test cases following that to see if somebody had truly committed a Parajika. And if there was no intent, it was not broken. This is very clear. There was an instance, you see, of a monk who was asleep and had the door open to his kuti as he slept. Okay, and so some unfortunate incident occurred. He awoke, he was horrified, he was afraid he'd committed a Parajika. He ran to the Buddha, prostrated himself. I've committed this terrible Parajika, and the Buddha questioned him. There was no intent. There was not even a consciousness, at the beginning. And so you have not committed a Parajika. You are innocent of that fault. But from now on, monks will close their doors when they nap. Now, if you do not know, and you read in the Bhikkhu Vinaya, you read that there is, a monk must close his door. You say, what a strange rule. But if you read the history behind it, then you understand why. So always, it is and Vinaya, takes 7 volumes like this. You cannot just study Parajika and make a pronouncement, or allow particularly a layperson to make a pronouncement to you if you have faulted or not faulted Vinaya. Now, sometimes I'm very outspoken. And when a layperson from Asia decides he wants to teach me Buddha Dhamma, I listen very carefully. But if he makes an error, I inform him of his error. It's kind of a game that the Vietnamese monks like to do at the Vietnamese temple, because the Vietnamese temple is only 1 block from my temple. And I was one of the founders of the Vietnamese temple. When a young monk comes, and we eat lunch together, I frequently go there for lunchtime. And I do know if I break a vow or if I do not break a vow, and if I do so, I do it intentionally and not out of ignorance. Well, they didn't know how to respond to that, But the fact is that it is very important to understand not only the rules, but how they came about, so that if you do something against a minor rule because the situation seems to call for it at that time, you are aware that you have done it. I mean, I don't encourage people to go out and break Vinaya, but for instance, you brought up the question about the handling of money. Originally, it's a gold and silver, So people say, well, I'm not handling gold and silver, I'm handling paper money. That begs the question. And I know some Theravadan monks in Asian countries have a Shramanera following them around holding money. That begs the question. You see. So that's not the answer either. It's not the letter of the law, but why that letter was laid down that we have to examine. And I think we can find that we really can live by Vinaya today. A number of those Vinaya rules no longer are questioned because of the difference in time and the difference in culture. Rules on toileting, for instance. With modern plumbing, I mean, that never arises. Whether you can pee here or pee there, it doesn't occur. So, but we should know, because we should know behind that rule what that rule meant. Because then it is adapted into other situations, you see. Which maybe is not exactly the same, but you see the adaptation of it. So I think it's very important. Before I took full ordination, I studied with my teacher in English, Vinaya. And I think this is very important, and one of the difficulties has been the lack of materials for the study, for the bhikshunis to study before ordination or following ordination. But actually, I think that we can come up with that. But it takes somebody who, just like in the teaching of sutra, it takes somebody who really knows and understands the material to help pass it on and to answer these very difficult questions. We also have, of course, I think in Europe you have a worse problem regarding robes than we do in the United States, at least on the West Coast. I remember the first time I put on robes, and I and a few of my sisters and brothers, we were walking down the street, and a car almost ran up a telephone pole. They don't even blink now when I walk down the street. Oh, it's because the neighborhood is becoming so Buddhist, and Los Angeles area is becoming so used to people in robes that it no longer really phases many of them. But I too am disturbed by people wearing strictly regular clothing, lay clothing, and I never do. I'm always in robes. On one occasion, I forget, I had to go someplace where I just could not, dress in robes. And so I was going with another nun friend, and I tell you, we had to scurry around like crazy because we didn't have any clothes to wear, It was a very difficult situation. And I walked through the grounds, and I had a scarf on my head, and not one of my disciples recognized me. Because I never dress in regular clothing, you see. So we are looking at really also the possibility of developing clothing for the street, not for the temples where people was probably still dressed in their traditional clothing, but street clothing which would be distinctive and yet not, clash so badly with the culture. Something that, because clothing changed as it went from country to country. And so eventually that will change also when it comes, into the West. I believe in the slow evolution of things. I think we have to be careful to not say, well, we're going to adapt this or adapt this. But there are a few things that I think we can work on slowly, to see what is a reasonable type of thing. And I know that my Asian brothers also are very eager to, especially the young ones who go off to the universities and the colleges. They do not want to take off their robes to go to school. And yet sometimes they have severe difficulties, if they wear them. And the abbots of some of the temples have said when you go to school you may change your clothes, but they're not really happy with it. It's sort of an expedient means. And these brothers also would like some type of a distinctive robe or, dress that would be Buddhist monk dress on the street, where we would all dress that way. The feeling is male and female alike, perhaps in a